If you thought you already knew everything about vampires in games, get ready to have a few ideas shaken up. In this video, I'm going to reveal 10 secrets and curiosities about vampires, Bloodlord Rising, that most players don't even imagine. Some of these things completely change how you see the game. I'm Matthew, so come with me today. There's blood, mystery, and plenty of surprises. When you hear publisher of Medieval Dynasty, a light immediately goes on in your head. Here comes a layered survival game, not just that gather resources, build, repeat loop. In Vampires Bloodlord Rising, you feel that same philosophy applied to a different theme, because beyond surviving, you're literally trying to reclaim your position as a vampire lord in a very dark, open world. It's the kind of game where you're not just playing as a vampire, you're living the routine, the drama, and the consequences of being that creature at the top of the food chain. The comparison with Valheim makes sense at the base level. Open world, resource gathering, crafting, combat, and that loop of slowly building your fortress. But here, the vampire twist completely changes the dynamic, because instead of being a fragile survivor afraid of the night, you're the predator who uses darkness as an advantage with abilities like strength, speed, and even bat transformation to explore. This role reversal makes survival craft less about fear and more about power and control, and that gives a very different vibe when you jump into the game. When you hear publisher of Medieval Dynasty, a light immediately goes on in your head. Here comes a layered survival game, not just that gather resources, build, repeat loop. In Vampires Bloodlord Rising, you feel that same philosophy applied to a different theme, because beyond surviving, you're literally trying to reclaim your position as a vampire lord in a very dark, open world. It's the kind of game where you're not just playing as a vampire, you're living the routine, the drama, and the consequences of being that creature at the top of the food chain. The comparison with Valheim makes sense at the base level. Open world, resource gathering, crafting, combat, and that loop of slowly building your fortress. But here, the vampire twist completely changes the dynamic, because instead of being a fragile survivor afraid of the night, you're the predator who uses darkness as an advantage, with abilities like strength, speed, and even bat transformation to explore. This role reversal makes survival craft less about fear and more about power and control, and that gives a very different vibe when you jump into the game. In Bloodlord Rising, the concept of overpowered vampiric senses completely changes how you see the game world. Instead of being just a stat buff like plus 20% speed or plus 30% damage, it's as if the game invites you to experience reality through a layer that mortals simply don't access. This makes every walk, every exploration, feel like you're seeing a different map than any human would. And for a character who is a vampire lord, that sense of sensory superiority fits perfectly with the fantasy. Superhuman strength, for me, is the first point where overpowered needs to feel good, not just numerically strong. When you land a blow and the enemy goes flying, when you break down a door or smash a structure no human could ever destroy, the game is constantly reminding you, you're not just another fragile survivor in this world. That kind of visual and physical feedback is what separates a vampire from a simple warrior with a big sword. Ideally, every physical action feels exaggerated, almost cinematic, but still within the logic of that universe. The speed and mobility side is where this vampiric senses package really changes the pace of gameplay. A fast vampire isn't just someone who runs quicker. It's someone who closes the distance before the enemy can react, who dances around the battlefield, who enters and exits fights like a shadow. When the game lets you move like that, the environment stops being a limitation and becomes a playground. You're not running from danger, you're choosing how and when danger will see you, and that creates a really satisfying feeling of control, of predator over prey. Now, the part I like most in this kind of approach is enhanced hearing and vision. This idea of tasting the invisible world mortals can't perceive. When a game gets this right, you're not just seeing HUD icons, you're sensing heartbeats at a distance, blood trails, whispers, echoes of footsteps, maybe even emotions or intentions of the people around you. It's almost like activating a hunter mode where the environment reorganizes itself in your favor, revealing secrets, threats, and opportunities that would slip past any other character. And that's where the vampire stops being just a strong tank and becomes a truly supernatural creature, reading the world through codes the rest of humanity will never understand. The game features insane building that fits perfectly with the fantasy of being a vampire lord. It's not just about raising a functional base, it's about building a home that commands respect. Bloodlord Rising lets you create a fully customizable, multi-level castle, and that already changes how you think about the map. Instead of where do I hide, it becomes where will I dominate. I get that feeling that every wall I place is another step in my own legend. And then there's the part that, for me, makes or breaks a building system. Variety with freedom. When you have an arsenal of pieces, towers, stairs, floors, passages, the fun is playing with verticality and flow, like creating a ceremonial path to reach the top, and another very practical one for hectic moments. I like it when the castle almost becomes a personal puzzle. If I enter here, I fall into a trap room. If I go up there, I have a view of the entire courtyard. It's that kind of layout choice that turns crafting into creativity, not a chore. And let's talk about the detail that screams theme. Customizable coffins. For me, the coffin is more than a thematic item, it's the emotional center of the character, kind of the vampiric equivalent of home in any RPG. I love when the game lets me choose where it sits, how it fits into the room, and how the surrounding space reinforces the idea that this spot is sacred or dangerous. It's the kind of thing that makes you want to build an entire hall just for that, with a vibe of, this is where the monster rests. The Gothic and medieval decorations are the final seasoning that make the castle stop looking like a generic build and turn into a place with personality. I always end up creating stories in my head while decorating. A narrow corridor with statues to intimidate, a trophy room that feels like a museum of tragedies, a tall tower just so I can feel like I rule everything from above. When a game gives you that kind of aesthetic freedom, you're not just optimizing, you're directing the mood of your own vampire movie. The ideal result is a castle that, even when empty, already feels like it's watching you. An interesting addition is co-op. You build the kingdom with your crew, but each person still carries their own moral compass, and that can bend the shared world in very unpredictable ways. The game makes it clear that you can play solo or in co-op with up to 4 people, and that choices really matter for the fate of Sangavia and for the possible endings. For me, the charm of co-op with individual chaos is exactly that delicious contradiction. Everyone helping to raise the castle, explore the map, and become a force of the night. But when it comes to the important decisions, there's no group vote that erases what you chose to be. Official material really emphasizes that you can become a bloodthirsty tyrant or a benevolent ruler who tries to protect people, and that changes how the populace sees you and how the story unfolds. And then comes the part I find most fun and dangerous in the best sense. When a game promises real consequences, it's basically inviting the group to create its own soap opera. The game says that, depending on your choices, people's perception changes and you unlock a variety of endings for the main story. So imagine 2 friends in the same world, one doing politics and the other doing terror, and the server turning into a bizarre mix of both paths. The detail that seals the deal is that co-op isn't just jump in to fight enemies. The proposal is to rule the land as equals, build the castle together, and see where individual decisions take you. I love this because it turns multiplayer into a living discussion, not just about builds and loot, but about who you're willing to be when you have power, and how your friend can be the worst or best possible ally without even needing to betray you. Bloodlord Rising doesn't want to seduce you on the sexual side. It wants to dominate you through violence and the fantasy of vampiric power. The game makes it explicit that, aside from some more revealing outfits, there is no nudity or any other sexual content. So the intention is to keep that boundary very clear. And then comes the full gore. The feeling is that the game trades any erotic appeal for a much more visceral one of blood, ritual, and brutality, which fits perfectly with the theme of feeding your castle and your rise as a vampire lord. The GOG description reinforces this focus on blood and domination by talking about fuel the core with blood, feed on humans and beasts, and a world that is grim, sinister, and bloody. It's basically the game saying the aesthetic here is gothic carnage, not romance. When you talk about brutal combat against the Inquisition, that also fits perfectly with the official premise. The game places the Inquisition as the force that hunts you relentlessly. The Inquisition will never stop hunting you and invites you to crush their holy warriors in brutal skill-based combat. For me, that changes the flavor of violence. It's not just killing generic enemies, it's clashing head-on with the armed sacred, which adds a cruel and almost provocative edge to the vampire fantasy. This Vampire's Bloodlord Rising promotion is one of those ideas that mixes reality and fantasy in a really creative way. They took advantage of the game's launch to encourage a super relevant social action, blood donation. If you donate by January 30 at any center and post a photo with the hashtag #Blood4Bloodlord, you have a chance to win a free game key. It's a direct invitation to turn a real-world gesture into part of the virtual experience, as if the act of donating blood made you a true bloodlord in real life. The most interesting part is how this campaign creates a bridge between the real world and the game's universe. The title plays with the idea that real heroes, those who save lives by donating blood, can become bloodlords, just like the characters in the game. This turns donation into something epic, almost as if you're entering the game's universe with a real mission. It's a smart way to use the theme of blood, so central to the game, to promote solidarity and community engagement. The promo's mechanics are also very simple and accessible. Just donate blood, take a photo, and post it with the hashtag. No red tape, no purchase required. That shows the studio genuinely wanted to encourage donation, not just use the cause as marketing. On top of that, the prize of 1,000 free keys is a generous number, which increases the feeling that everyone has a real chance to participate and win. For me, this promotion is an example of how games can connect with the real world in a positive way. Instead of focusing only on sales or hype, Vampire's Bloodlord Rising used its launch to generate social impact, turning players into agents of change. It's a reminder that sometimes a game's greatest power exists outside the screen, helping real people. This mechanic of thralls with personalities is one of the things that caught my attention the most, because it transforms the game from a simple vampire castle into something much deeper. Each servant you recruit, once a normal villager, now has a personality, unique strengths, and weaknesses. This makes you stop thinking of them as mere pawns and start seeing each one as a strategic piece in your plan of domination. The most interesting part is that these differences aren't just aesthetic or numerical. They really impact how you use each thrall. Some are stronger at hunting, others are better at castle construction, and there are those who excel at defense. This forces you to think about how to manage your team of servants in an optimized way, choosing the best combinations for each task. It's like assembling an RPG party, where each member has a defined role and importance. In other words, the game makes you pay attention to details and make tactical decisions. It's no use just recruiting anyone, because if you put a weak thrall on defense, they can be easily eliminated by the Inquisition. On the other hand, if you get the right combination, you can create an almost unbeatable team capable of facing any challenge. This adds a layer of strategy and personality that makes the experience much more engaging. For me, this mechanic is one of the game's highlights, because it turns thrall management into something almost human. You start to grow attached to certain servants, root for them, and feel the loss when one dies. It's a game that goes beyond simple survival, creating bonds and tensions between characters as if each thrall were part of your vampiric story. This shape-shifting mechanic is one of the aspects that most enriches the experience of playing as a powerful vampire. You're not locked into a single playstyle. You can switch between forms that give you very distinct abilities. The bat, for example, is perfect for exploring high areas or escaping danger, giving that classic, mysterious touch of vampires flying through the night. But the game goes further. You can choose between the aristocrat, an elegant and stealthy form, ideal for infiltrating among humans or acting discreetly, and the hunter, a brutal and aggressive version, made to dominate, combat, and massacre enemies without mercy. This switching isn't just visual. Each form has its own abilities and completely changes how you face the game's challenges. The skill tree lets you customize these transformations even more, allowing you to decide how to develop your abilities and prioritize certain styles. This means each player has a unique experience, adapting their vampire to their own way of playing. Want to act like a master manipulator or a relentless predator? The choice is yours, and the game gives you the freedom to explore both paths. For me, this mechanic is what sets Vampires Bloodlord Rising apart from other games in the genre. It's not just about being strong or fast, it's about choosing how you want to be a vampire. Subtle and cunning, or fierce and direct. This variety of styles makes each session more engaging because you can always try something new without being stuck in a single approach. The Hungry Castle Core is one of the most creative ideas I've seen in vampire games. The heart of your castle literally pulses, and it only grows and develops if you feed it blood, human or animal. It's as if the castle itself were a living being, hungry and dependent on you to survive and evolve. This completely changes how you explore and play. To unlock new regions and areas hidden by the mist, you need to make sure the castle core is well fed. This forces you to go on constant hunts, creating a cycle of survival and expansion that makes the game more dynamic and immersive. Every drop of blood you collect has a direct purpose in the evolution of your domain. What's most interesting is that this mechanic creates a sense of urgency and strategy. You can't just explore the world freely, you need to plan your hunts and decide where and when to collect blood to feed the castle. It's a vampire game that truly makes you feel like a predator, always thinking about how to keep your territory alive and growing. For me, this idea transforms the castle from a simple backdrop into a central character in the story. The castle core isn't just a structure, it's an extension of you, the vampire, and its hunger reflects your own need for power and domination. It's a detail that adds depth to the game, making every decision more meaningful and every victory more satisfying. This name change to Vampires Bloodlord Rising wasn't just a marketing update, it was a real transformation in the game's tone and identity. Before, the title was more generic, but now it screams its focus: vampiric domination, power, and ascension. The visuals were also updated, making everything darker, more imposing, and more immersive, as if the game were finally finding its true essence. The stronger focus on vampiric domination in the narrative makes it clear that it's no longer just about surviving or exploring, but about building an empire, expanding your territory, and subjugating everyone who crosses your path. The game seems to want you to feel like a true Lord of Darkness, with decisions that directly impact the world around you. It's as if every choice were part of an epic saga of power and corruption. For me, this change shows that the developers listened to community feedback and decided to invest in a deeper, more engaging experience. Now it's not just about being a vampire, it's about being the vampire who shapes the world in their own image. It's an upgrade that makes the game more mature, more ambitious, and, above all, more faithful to what every vampire fan expects: power, mystery, and absolute domination.